Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Planeswalkers Pub. I'm your host, Aaron.
I'm Eric.
Howdy, it's RJ. Today we're going to be talking about our top underrated cards in Magic.
Our friends over at tcgplayer.com. In the description box below is our affiliate link that will take you over to tcgplayer.com and let them know that we sent you. You're going to be buying cards anyway, so why not help the channel at the same time? I also want to mention the fact that we are now on Spotify as well as iTunes.
And Google Play.
But if you're on YouTube, make sure to hit that subscribe button as well as a bell. This way you can stay up to date on all the newest episodes.
Now that that's done, let's talk about our signature card.
Yes, every episode of the Planeswalkers Pub will feature a signature card that may or may not relate to the episode's topic.
Today's signature card is Mana Short. Mana Short costs 2 and a blue. It states, Mana Short empties target player's mana pool and taps that player's lands.
Yeah, so with the actual errata, well, not really errata, but the cleaned up version of this, the 7th edition, it basically states that all their lands get tapped and then they just empty their mana pool. This card seems very interesting. And it's kind of interesting that you're the one that actually brought it to us because you mentioned to ban Silenced originally when we were talking about our ban list.
Well, this is a target player. This isn't the whole board. Silence just says your opponents can't do anything.
That's true.
Silence is 1 white instant. Your opponents can't cast spells this turn. Yeah, Mana Short is very similar to a blue Silence.
Yeah, so it's just kind of... It's basically like if you put up Cyclonic Rift versus River's Rebuke. Basically the same effect. It's just it targets one player versus everybody. I still like it though, just because it just tells one player, hey, you're gonna go screw yourself for right now.
The reason I thought Silence was only one player is because I'm so used to my opponent being, oh, you can't cast spells this turn. I'm just like, okay. I didn't realize my other opponents couldn't cast spells either.
Yeah, you're thinking of more or less like a Grand Arbiter or something in that sense, where it's like, hey, you can't cast spells during my turn type deal.
Yeah.
But yeah, Silence is kind of like that. And I do like Mana Shorts. You can just activate this or cast this during someone's like upkeep. This way they can just aren't playing anything this turn, which is kind of nice.
But yeah, I like to think of this as also a sort of pseudo counterspell. It's like you can't do like this is before they counter. You're like, okay, no, Mr. Blue player. Yeah, I get it. I'm the blue player too. But Mr. Blue, other blue player, no more spells for you.
Yeah, and what's even better is the fact of it empties their mana pool. So most of the time it's like, oh, well, I'm going to like tap down your lands or something like that. So it's like, okay, well, I'll float the mana in response. Or I'm going to destroy that land. I'm going to float the mana in response.
That before it resolves,
you can cast something, but that's your window. That's it. You have to basically, while this is still on the stack, tap all my mana and then cast something with that mana. But whatever is remaining when this actually resolves, that's just gone.
Yeah.
I mean, it's good if you have like a Vidakon Aura or something. That's where you can kind of just use it. But it also forces people to play at a much different speed than most people were used to. And I like the fact of activating this because it's an instant on your opponent's upkeep. This way, if they don't have any flash or anything in that sense, they're just sitting out this turn.
They still have access to any Mana Rocks or Mana Dorks, though.
That's true. So switching over to our main topic. So we are going to be talking about our most underrated cards that some people might say aren't worth a spot in your deck or even you shouldn't be playing at all. But we think otherwise. First card I kind of want to mention is Anticipate. Anticipate is 1 in a blue instant that says, look at the top 3 cards of your library, put one of them into your hand, one of them on top of your library, and then one onto the bottom of your library. It's a really cool card that a lot of people would say isn't worth it because Brainstorm exists, where that's just a general quote-unquote better card. Thoughts?
I would probably play this and Brainstorm. Typically, if you're using those type of effects, your entire deck probably revolves around them. Like you're using something off the top of your deck like Elsha of the Infinite or something like that. So you definitely want to manipulate the top of your deck as many times as you can. And Anticipate definitely seems like an excellent support package along with your Brainstorms, your Ponders, whatever you want to mess around with your deck with.
You know me, I'm not exactly the big blue player, so I have a hard time when it comes to trying to make an opinion on blue cards because I just don't really know. So this card, it's good. It's the same thing as Brainstorm, just for 1 extra mana.
Yeah,
And
well, the thing is, it's different than Brainstorm, because Brainstorm, you would put Brainstorm inside of like a Niv Mizzet deck because you're physically drawing those 3 cards. With Anticipate, you're not drawing anything. You're actually looking at the cards themselves. I think a lot of people, the reason why they didn't really care for it in the same thing with your Elsha comment is the fact that you're still pitching one to the bottom of your library. So if you've got like 3 good cards, or if you draw like happen to have all your combo pieces or something, then putting one of them to the bottom is kind of just shitty.
That's fair. I didn't think of that, but that's pretty...
Corner case situation.
Yeah, it's a very corner case situation. How many do you look at?
3.
You look at 3.
So this thing, you look at 3, and one goes to your hand, one goes on top, and then one goes to the bottom. I like it just because with Brainstorm, we'll always get those times where you'll draw 3 with Brainstorm or whatever. You draw, like, let's say 2 lands and something useful. You're now putting those 2 lands back on top. You're now drawing 2 lands guaranteed for the next 2 turns, unless you got something else to shuffle your library. That's the reason why I like this over Brainstorm, because it physically moves them around, which is always great. You still get that technically 1-for-1 card draw because you do get the card, and then you set up the next draw, and then the last one you can just toss to the bottom. If it's something important, then, I don't know, maybe you should check the way you shuffled your deck or something.
How many times have you pondered or whatever, and all 3 cards were the best? That's
Yeah.
very unlikely.
True. Very, very true. I guess we can go over to one of yours.
Yeah, sure. One of my most underrated cards for EDH is definitely the Pain Lands. If you don't know what they do, they come in every color combination, and they come out and they either tap for colorless or they tap for one of the 2 colors, and they deal 1 damage to you. This is phenomenal for color fixing, and the Pain Lands are incredibly cheap. I think the most expensive might be $1.50, if that. Mm-hmm. Everyone's always talking about budget options in Commander, and the more colors you have access to, the better your decks generally tend to be. And I find Pain Lands are left out on a lot of people's lists when they would otherwise fit right at home. True, they're not basic land types, but they still provide you that color fixing when you need it at the time. What do you think, RJ?
I like the Pain Lands. I run Shivan Reef in Saheeli. It taps for any color I need, yeah, it pings me, and I can't search for it, but I would run that over running a Guildgate or another tap land or one of the life lands because I can use it immediately.
I mean, my thing is, and I feel like kind of sort of the same principle as other people. Now, notes that, especially with the Pain Lands, CEDH or competitive Commander, they'll agree 100% with you that, yes, run those because speed is everything. Yes, a little bit of pain doesn't really matter if you're just going to win the game. But for the more casuals like us, I'm not 100% on the Pain Lands because you're pinging yourself 1 basically every turn, or at the very least like every other turn or something like that. That 1 damage doesn't seem like a lot, but it can add up decently quickly.
So the thing with the Pain Lands is not only do they tap for their color and ping you, but they also tap for colorless for free.
Yes.
So after, let's say, unless you're really mana screwed in a game and you only have a Pain Land and like 2 basics, you will most likely eventually just be tapping it for colorless, so you're not pinging.
That's what I was actually about to say. The color fixing is there when you need it, but it taps for colorless when you don't.
Yeah. I don't know, it's just, there's been too many times where I've seen it as someone just is stuck on, like, if you're playing Saheeli or some of that, since you're only stuck on blue, but this you have the 1 red Pain Land, and yeah, you'll ping yourself once, twice, 3 times in order to cast certain things. It does get to the point where, yes, you will eventually get that red source, but how much damage did you take in the process of that? I'd rather just have the life land that comes in tapped, but then once it untaps, you're good to go forever.
You know I love the pain, baby.
Well, that's pretty much the difference. Do you want to avoid the damage but have it come in tapped and have your entire game be slower, or do you want the instant access to the Pain Lands?
Well, that's the thing. It's like, how much slower is the game by 1 turn? Because think about when you're getting it. Let's say it's turn 3 or whatever. You're stuck on blue. You need the red. You draw the tap land, put it in tapped, gain 1 life. Turn 4, I don't have access to red. I can still play my game. Versus getting the Pain land, and you can play something on turn 3, but then turn 4 you don't get a red source. Turn 5 you don't get a red source. Turn 6 you don't get a red source. You've pinged yourself now 3 times. Versus mine, I've actually gained a life. That's my ping with the Pain lands. I don't know. I do like them, but only in specific desperate situations.
You asked how much of a difference that is. It's a vast difference. 1 turn and the tap lands can severely alter the power level of your deck, to the point that I don't think decks with tap lands can be higher than a 5. I don't think it's possible. Mm-hmm. It's just that much slower. I'm going on record here. I mean, I probably have badmouthed them before, but I hate the tap lands. I get them out of my deck as soon as I can.
Marisi, which is in ramp colors, and I wasn't ramping, and I had lands that were coming in tapped. On turn 4, or even if turn 3 hits and I can't play my Cultivate because my land entered tapped, now I'm like a good two turns behind my opponents now.
Yeah, all right.
Because I wasn't able to ramp because I just didn't have that mana early enough.
All right, I can see that. One of your cards?
So this is a cool creature that I found, but this is more of an idea than a specific card. The card example is Fusion Elemental. It costs Wooburg, or white, blue, black, red, green. It's an elemental. It's an 8/8. That's it.
That's it?
It's an 8/8. It's a big dumb creature.
An 8/8.
It's an 8/8 for 5 mana.
Yeah, but it doesn't have trample, doesn't have lifelink, doesn't have first strike, doesn't have...
It's a very good vanilla creature, but that's the whole idea is you play something on the board and they're like, okay, what does it do? Nothing. And they're like, oh, okay, whatever. Like, they don't care about it because it's nothing. It's just a body on the board. But you forget how big a single body on the board can be. In Marisi, having 3 versus 2 creatures can mean controlling the whole board or doing nothing.
What you're kind of getting at is that people underrate creatures that don't have any abilities because we've all gotten used to something that has trample, something that has first strike, something that has lifelink. We've all gotten really, really used to these keywords, and we find that things that don't have keywords are kind of just garbage.
They feel useless, but if you have a 1/1 on turn 1 and you can immediately start pinging people, or if you have an 8/8 on turn 5, if you somehow manage to pull off a Wooburg on turn 5.
Probably earlier if you've got...
like ramp and things like that.
I was going to say like Signet or something, but yeah.
But just having a big body on the board can prevent aggro decks, like quick little, like a Goblin Tribal that's trying to just swing with you. You can block some of that damage.
Not even goblins or anything. Think about just like someone's commander. I'm not running any of my commanders into that 8/8. Like,
yeah, no.
I'm just not doing it.
Yeah, but the thing is, you don't have to worry about it because it's blocked all day, every day by Llanowar Elves, which is a 1/1.
But that's against a token deck. Yeah, I guess they're really useless. But against your Teysa sack combo deck, like you're not really like you have some stuff to block it with, but you're forcing them to use their creatures as block fodder rather than comboing off.
Or even better, it is just a really good blocker. Just even if it just shows up, never attacks, it just makes people think, do I really want to swing into that without some type of getting around it? I mean, you think if I've got like a 4/4 with first strike, that's still not killing this thing. If I've got like, a 2/2 with trample or whatever, or like a 5/5 with trample, that's still not killing this thing. So
even things that are really good and really powerful, like Yarok, he's a 3/5 with Death Touch, Lifelink, and
the double enter the battlefield, the Panharmonicon effect.
The Panharmonicon effect. I didn't know I thought he had another keyword for some reason.
No, Death Touch, Lifelink.
You are using Yarok not just for those keywords, using him for his ability, but you're not going to swing your Yarok into this guy because even though my guy will die, so will your commander.
Yeah.
Like, that's the thing. Even if you have some amazing 7/7 first strike, trample, haste, it'll still die if you throw it into this.
Yeah.
Well, unless you have flyers.
Plus, I feel like with vanilla creatures in general, let's put up Hushbringer. It's something that is brand new that came out in Throne of Eldraine, and that says any enter the battlefield effects or dying triggers don't actually trigger. When it comes to vanilla creatures, they have no ETB effects, so they'll just come in like normal. And this can really just... An 8/8 for 5, you say?
I think the most relevant vanilla creatures in Commander has been bears because of Ayula. And there was that Anthem effect that affects non-vanilla creatures. I think gives them +2/+2. It's mutagenic something.
Yeah, it's on screen right now. It's the green one.
Yeah.
But even that's just really, really good. So, yeah. All right. Shout out to Vanilla Creatures. Another card that I want to mention that's kind of underrated, in my opinion, is Tainted Strike. It's a single black for an instant. Target creature gets +1/+0 and gains Infect until end of turn. In case you don't know what Infect does, when it's hitting a creature, it deals damage in -1/-1 counters, and when it's hitting a player, it deals damage in poison counters. You have 10 poison counters, you lose the game. So this card, as great as it is, I never see anyone play it. And I feel like the reason why is because everyone's thinking about the grand scheme of things where, okay, well, I'm just going to, someone will swing in, they don't block, it's like a 9/9 or whatever, or that 8/8 we just talked about. They don't block or whatever, I'll just use a Tainted Strike, give them 9 infects, then, I'll try to do 1 more infect and they die. Here's the thing, even if someone swings in and it's just 5 damage or 6 damage, that's still worth, in my opinion, to give someone infect. People play differently when they have poison counters on them. Eric's giving me this look, so go ahead. What's you up?
Well, there's a lot of problems with Infect in EDH. It's a very feast or famine ability. It either kills you or does literally nothing. Unless you have 10 poison counters, you could have 9, and it could not matter at all, because you're not going to lose with 9 Infect counters. You're only going to lose with 10. So, unless there's consistent Infect sources, having Tainted Strike being the only source of Infect in your entire deck is completely useless unless you use it to knock somebody out. Like, I play this in my Greven deck.
Yeah, because you can guarantee to get up to the 10 this. Well, even still, let's say someone drops an Emrakul or whatever. They don't target you with it. They swing with their Emrakul. It's flying. Pro instance, so that's what working against Emrakul. But let's say they use like an Eldrazi or whatever. And they're like, okay, well, that's
A Merit Lodge.
Merit Lodge, sure. Let's say that someone swings in with Merit Lodge, which is easy enough to get out because people do it all the time. It's annoying. Someone swings with Merit Lodge. That's what, 10 damage? 20 damage?
20. It's 20/20.
20/20 flying indestructible.
God, that thing's fucking annoying. It's 20 damage right there. You just activate Tainted Strike. And it doesn't have to be you. Let's say that RJ is using his Merit Lodge to swing against Eric. I'll then say, okay, Eric's like, okay, well, no blocks, it's in the air. I can't do anything about that. I'll say, cool. After they declare no blocks, before damage, Tainted Strike, you're dead? Like, and I know it's one of those things where you're thinking, okay, that's so situational, that's so a perfect example type thing. But once again, it goes back to my same principle. And you said, yes, that's true. At 9 infect, you don't lose the game. But realistically, if I'm at 9 infect, I'm blocking everything everyone's throwing at me for the rest of the game. Because I don't know when someone has another Tainted Strike or someone has Proliferate or some crazy shenanigans that might just kill me.
I'm fairly sure that if someone was running an Infect strategy, the whole table would know.
But that's the cool thing about it. That's the cool thing about Tainted Strike. It is, you don't have to run an Infect strategy. You just have to threaten that you're running an Infect strategy.
You just have to have a big enough creature. Like, to be honest, if you're running Selesnya tokens, if you're running a bunch of 1/1s, don't run Tainted Strike.
No,
you
but
actually can't run this in Selesnya.
You can't run that Selesnya, but you can run...
Triumph of the Hordes?
Thank you. You can run Triumph of the Hordes. And that's the same principle of this. Why is that Triumph of the Hordes gets more popularity than Tainted Strike?
Because it gives trample.
Yes.
Because it's in green?
Yes, and because it hits all of your creatures. However, that's something that everyone knows about. If someone pulls this out, it could just kill someone, and you won't even know it.
Also, Triumph of the Hordes is a sorcery. This is an instant.
Which is even better. Which means you can use it on your opponent's stuff.
Yes, but Triumph of the Hordes is a win con. This is essentially non-bow until you hit that 10-power creature.
I don't know.
Or someone else does. I mean, in our play group, honestly, this would be a great card because we like beating each other up.
Yeah.
We like hitting hard, and well, at least I like hitting hard with big creatures, and I know I'm not the only one.
Or even, like, if, going back to the same example, let's say that he swings with the 8/8s or something like that. I'll Tainted Strike this, you're up to 9. And then someone's like, hey, that seems like a good idea. All right, I'm going to go ahead and reverberate that. You're now up to 10. You die. If it's a guaranteed way of killing an opponent, you don't have to do anything but waste a single card, I'm doing it.
Yeah, that's true. But I think Tainted Strike's problem is the fact that a lot of black decks aren't aggro. At least not aggro in the way of I turn my cards left. Greven being one of the few examples of a deck that can utilize Tainted Strike properly. How many other black aggro or multicolored do you know that would benefit from this?
You're thinking too one-dimensionally. I'm not using some of my creatures, I'm using everyone else's. That's the beauty of it.
So you're going to use one of the slots in your deck and hold on to a Tainted Strike, just on the off chance that the stars will align and you'll be able to use it to assist someone else to kill someone else. I mean, I know these are underrated cards, Aaron, but come on, man.
We run Swords of Plowshare, Path to Exile to specifically use on our opponent's creatures. Sometimes we'll use it to save our lives. Most time we use it to save other people, just because it's something that's annoying that we need to take care of.
So this is I see both of you guys. I really do. Like, I get it. Like, you really are hoping that I don't find
The stars don't have to align. That's the cool thing about this.
Yeah, it's not exactly that impossible to imagine. Oh, someone swung with like a 5/5 creature with double strike. Would you?
Oh yeah, you're dead.
Would you let a 5/5 creature with double strike just hit you if you like had your combo pieces on the board and you were just waiting for like that one turn to go off? Would you let a 5/5 double strike just swing in and just deal its damage real quick, get it over with?
It's only 10 damage. You're at 40 life. Who cares?
I might.
I also would say though that if I can't do it myself in my deck, I wouldn't run Tainted Strike.
That's true.
Like, I would run Tainted Strike if I had even like maybe 2 or 3 creatures that could deal that damage. But if I was running all 1/1s, I'm not going to do that.
I mean, I'm playing in Greven to use on Greven.
Right.
Yeah. So I definitely do recommend that. At least try to use it in your own deck, but outside of that, it's still just a really, really good combat trick.
On the same breath as Tainted Strike, I say we should bring up combat tricks. These are things that we all know about. We've all seen them. We played. They're not draft chaff, but they're draft chaff. You're not going to keep them.
Well, I don't think they're draft chaffed in Standard. I think there actually are combat tricks that are used in Standard. Like, Settle the Wreckage is probably one of the most popular ones in the last couple years. I mean, I know Settle's rotated out, but it's the one that most comes to my mind. Embercleave, that could be a combat trick, and that's sweeping the Standard, Modern, and I think even the Pioneer metas.
Sailor Records is definitely kind of a really good combat trick that a lot of people didn't see coming. Even when we thought it was coming, it wasn't, which is great. I also want to mention just something like Giant Growth, which is very nicely known as just draft chaff. It's a 1 green for an instant. Target creature gets +3/+3 until end of turn. Common. Means most people think it's garbage, especially in Commander.
Cyclonic Rift can technically be classified as a combat trick.
Yeah, technically
but
it is.
But it's not, though. The point is, combat tricks are just something that Commander players aren't really used to running against, unless you're running like a spell slinger deck. Like, if we see feathers on the table, we know, okay, this is a combat trick style deck, so we're expecting it. But something like Marisi, for instance, if you run a Giant Growth in Marisi, I probably won't see it coming. I'm not lying to you, I'm being legit.
Note to self, put Giant Growth in Marisi.
Just like any combat trick in general, because you want to hit people anyway, so I'm just like, okay, well, I'm going to go to it anyway, who really cares? But I don't think you consider the damage that you're doing.
Well, to be the negative Nancy here, the reason that combat tricks aren't seen as much in Commander is because more times than not, they're often non-bows. Sure, you pump this one creature this one time, but often that just means a -1 in card advantage. And when the next turn goes, nothing significant has changed. Feather is unique in that it can reuse and abuse all those combat tricks, all those cantrips that would previously have been useless and would have just gone to the graveyard.
Yeah. I mean, my thing is the fact of a lot of people will say, okay, well, yeah, it's just a 1 for 0 situation and nothing's really changed. But if I can deal 5 damage to them versus dealing 8 damage to them, yeah, it's math, I'm probably going to deal 8, you know? Unless you're against a life gain deck, in which case there's nothing I can do about that anyway. But, you know, more damage is always good. Especially if you're in a... Combat tricks are typically used in combat-heavy decks. The ones that are turning sideways all the time. So okay, I'll block this one, and I'll leave your land where elves or whatever. Who cares? I'll just take the 1 damage. Actually, you're taking 3 damage. Actually taking 4 damage. Slightly better.
Yes, but combat tricks need to have an impact. Things like Tainted Strike, Charm of the Hordes, Overwhelming Stampede. They're all combat tricks that help you win the game. I'm not really concerned by doing, what's Giant Growth, +4?
+3.
+3 additional damage, unless that person is dying.
Well, then let's use combat tricks on the opposite side. What if someone were to, Toxic Deluge? You're like, okay, X equals what? How big is your commander? 5? All right, cool. I'll pay 5 life. In response, Giant Growth. My commander lives. You just pay 5 life for nothing. Would you take a combat trick over that? And you can't say that's situational because that happens all the fucking time.
I mean, that's a nice situation, but I would have put Giant Growth in it for situations like that.
How about defensively? Someone swings into you with their commander because, you have 1 tiny blocker. I'm just going to swing into you. You'll take the damage. Just usual what would happen in a game. Like, I can't do anything, so I'm going to hit you with Yarok.
You've got a 2/2, someone swings in with Yarok. It's like, okay, well, if you block, whatever, you won't take the damage anyway, but I'll still gain the life. You're like, okay, blocks, and then before damage, Giant Growth. Now we trade.
I don't know. I'm a huge proponent of the card advantage theory, and if I'm going to chuck cards to the graveyard, they better damn well do something impactful for me to consider putting them in my deck.
And this is the same guy that's got a freaking feather deck. Actually, yeah, that makes sense because you don't race into the cards.
Feather is a card advantage engine. What are you talking about, Aaron?
Whatever. Next card.
So, speaking of Feather and combat tricks, I think this flows well into our next card category, Cantrips. Cantrips are typically 1 mana instants that do something relatively small, but they replace themselves in drawing a card. Blue is probably the most famous for this, as they have the most, but they have scattered to the other colors as time has gone on. Probably one of the most famous ones is Opt, which is scry 1 and then draw a card. It's 1 blue instant. But there's another one I particularly like in red. It's Expedite, which is target creature gains haste and you draw a card, which is used in my Feather deck. But even if you're not running Feather and can infinitely abuse and reuse it, I still think Expedite might be worth a look in some red decks, as red is famously, not very good on card draw. And cantrips can be seen to go through your deck a bit faster. If you play Expedite, you draw a card, and you're 1 card deeper than you would have been normally. And your 1 creature has haste, which could be relevant. It can tap or attack. Could have relevant ability in either of those things.
There is also Semut's Sprint, which is also in Tiger Feather deck. Single red for an instant. Target creature gets +2/+1, gains haste, and until end of turn, and then you also scry 1. So you're not really drawing the 1 card, but you get to put that land onto the bottom that you don't necessarily need. Or keep it on top.
The one that you were saying, and both of yours, I think, are both target creature, not your creature. So your guy sitting next to you, this is a great political piece. Just be like, hey, you want a little bit more damage and you want haste? Here you go. I draw a card.
Yeah, or even better, just let's say you don't have any creatures or whatever to target. At the end of your turn, like, hey, I just want to use this because someone put out an Elishnorn. Well, all of my creatures are just going to die. There's nothing I can do about it, but I'm going to target one. I'm going to target the Elishnorn. It now has haste at the end of your turn or whatever, so you can't attack me, and I still get to draw a card to still dig for other things. Cantrips are interesting, but a lot of people don't like them because they don't, quote unquote, give you. You're breaking even. And in Magic, a lot of people say you shouldn't be breaking even.
This coming from the guy who wants to put giant growth to protect his creatures from toxic deluge.
Hey,
you're all over the place, Aaron.
I'm putting giant growth to protect my creatures because my commander costs a lot, all right? I don't have to recast it 5 freaking times.
Note to self, though, when playing against Aaron, always add 4 to wherever you want a toxic deluge.
Well, giant growth is 3, so it's +3.
Just to be safe.
Yeah, right?
So the next sort of thing, it's a kind of a keyword actually that is on a lot of things, but you don't really see it in Commander a lot, is things with regenerate. My example, Lutleth Troll. It's a black and a green zombie troll, 2/1 with trample. Discard a card, put a +1/+1 counter on it, or you can pay a black and regenerate it.
Now, what does regenerate do?
Regenerating is essentially the next time the creature would be destroyed, you tap it, remove all damage from it, and remove it from combat.
Yep.
So if it was fighting, it comes out, it taps, and it doesn't take any damage. Another thing that people don't think of is when you regenerate a creature, just because it's tapped doesn't mean you can't still regenerate it.
Yes.
You can regenerate it as many times as you have the mana or the ability to. You just can't block with it the next turn. That's why it's tapped, or you can't use a tap ability.
Basically. And it is also nice to note that when it comes to something like Day of Judgment, Wrath of God, stuff like board wipes, regenerate will still work with that. Versus...
Not Wrath of God.
Oh yeah, not Wrath of God, because the Wrath of God specifically says it can't be regenerated. But regenerate works for stuff like that versus like flickering or... actually, yeah, because you use that in Feather.
Justicar's Portal, which
Yeah.
does it instantly.
Exactly. Like Justicar's Portal, for instance, because the way the stack would work, it's Wrath of God's on it, and then you put Justicar's Portal on it. The portal resolves first, which means the creature is now still in the field, and it gets hit by the Wrath of God. Versus something like Regenerates, the creature basically takes the damage and still lives. It's a weird way
Well,
of
it doesn't
explaining
take the damage because
Well, it
Wrath of God specifically destroys.
Yeah.
The regeneration prevents it from being destroyed.
Yes. It's kind of like a pseudo-indestructible that you have to pay for.
Yeah, and I can see why people wouldn't want to use it. I got to pay mana for it. It doesn't always work. But how many times do you chump block with a creature and you lose it and you're like, damn, I kind of still want that. I needed that on the board. I still need that blocker.
Or just have like an immortal blocker type deal.
Yeah, or like with Lutleth Troll, it's essentially so you can just get that trample damage through.
Yeah.
Where you just regenerate it so it can still... Well,
The fun thing is that with regeneration, you can do it after damage is dealt, but before the end of combat, you can technically remove it from combat at that point. It's an instant ability, which is kind of nice. And I feel like it's definitely underrated because how many times do people just board wipe, especially in Commander, that you really just can't do anything about? The downside, though, is that Regenerate will not stop it from getting eggs out. So Swords, Path, it's still going away.
oh yeah, and also there's all those board wipes that say it can't be regenerated.
Yeah.
But when you see a board wipe on the field, you see a lot of different ones. There's a lot of them out there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there certainly are enough board wipes that don't have the regeneration prevention, so you can generally get away with it. But I think the reason regeneration isn't seen very often is because either the creatures that have it aren't very good or impactful in EDH, or because there's so many things that get around regeneration, such as the board wipes that do, or things like negative counters. Though regenerating with negative counters will technically regenerate the creature, but it will still die.
Mm-hmm. True.
However, one of my favorite cards actually grants regeneration to all your creatures, Aestheticism, which is 3 green enchantment. Creatures you control have hexproof, and you can pay 1 and a green to regenerate target creature.
But yeah, Regenerate is really, really cool. One of my last cards to talk about is Chromatic Lantern. Now, obviously...
What are you talking about, Aaron? Chromatic Lantern is a very popular card.
It's in like all my 3-color decks.
So Chromatic Lantern, for those of you that don't know, is a 3-mana artifact that states, A, you can tap it for any color mana, and B, your land's now tap for any color. So I'm saying Chromatic Lantern's underrated, but specifically inside of 2-colored decks.
How much fixing do you need in 2-color decks, Aaron?
You could be surprised. So I personally run Chromatic Lantern in, basically all of my 2-color decks because it's just not thinking about how you're tapping a mana is always a good thing. Realistically, it just is. You might happen to be like, only on blue, and you need that other red source or whatever. If you got 3 blue lands, you now drop that Chromatic Lantern. Congratulations, you can now cast whatever you want from your deck. It's a guaranteed, I don't have to worry about lands ever.
So, when it comes back to giving Aaron a hard time for making decisions, when we were arguing on the ban list, how me and you agreed on
Not off-colored fetches.
off-color fetches, how we didn't like off-color fetches. In a 2-color deck, you shouldn't need 5 fetches. in the same light, in a 2-color deck, do you really need a Chromatic Lantern?
I agree with RJ on here. I mean, it is at the worst, Chromatic Lantern is a 3 mana rock that taps for 1, which really isn't a great rate, to be honest.
You're not using it for that. You're using it for its other effects.
Yeah, but again, how much fixing do you really need? Are the pips in your deck so erratic that you definitely need everything to be like that?
It's not that. It's just the fact that Magic is one of those games, especially when it comes to shuffling and deck building, that occasionally the lands won't show up the way you need them to. I personally would rather have a Chromatic Lantern over something like a Signet, if I just don't have that other color. Like in my Locust God deck, for instance, which has a bunch of card draw in it, don't get me wrong, it does skew a little bit more towards blue than red. But occasionally I'm like, okay, I really need that red source. I'll drop the Chromatic Lantern faster than I'll drop the Signet. Because this way it guarantees I don't have to worry about my mana for the rest of the game. I do also want to mention that
unless someone destroys your Chromatic Lantern.
Yeah, then I'm a little screwed. But that's a good point of Chromatic Lantern is a powerful card that people will destroy knowing that it'll screw you over. My theory is that everyone already puts it inside of their 3-color decks. We should slowly start putting it inside our 2-color decks too, just because it gives you the exact same amount of fixing.
I think there are honestly better ways to fix your lands than using Chromatic Lantern. I actually think that's overkill.
I think rather than having a Chromatic Lantern in a 2-color deck, I would just have another basic, just another chance to draw that land that you need. Like if you for some reason keep playing, because that's the thing, the one game every once in a while where you for some reason can't draw the color you need, is that really enough of a reason to put a whole card in your deck? Why not have that basic land? Why not have another creature, another enchantment, another thing that does something other than fix your mana? Or even a better mana fix, like a ramp card or a talisman.
I mean, there really aren't any ramp cards in, like, Orzhov.
Well, there's Artifact Ramp, there's Commander Sphere, there's other lands like Exotic Orchard or Felwar Stone. I think there are better mana fixings than Chromatic Lantern, at least for 2 colors.
But my point is that with Chromatic Lantern, or not that, with Commander Sphere and the Felwar Stone and things like that, those only tap for a single of that other color. Let's say you do have like a 2-pip or whatever. Let's take the Niv Mizzet, for instance. Triple red, triple blue. If you only have, let's say, 4 blue and then 2 red, and then one of those red sources is the Felwar Stone, versus a Chromatic Lantern, if that was there, you could literally just cast them right there. Not have to worry about it.
That's fair. But again, corner case. So, speaking of lands and land fixing, I'm going to be a huge hypocrite over here. Remember that tangent I went on about tap lands? Well,
Peppertron remembers.
Yeah, ignore that for a second as I talk about the slow fetches. Also known as the original fetches. Yes, these came out way before the fetch lands we know today. What do? Well, they come in tapped.
But Eric, you said you didn't like tap lands. You told people to throw them out and stop playing Magic.
Okay, I didn't go that far. But they're budget. And when they untap, you sacrifice them without paying 1 life, by the way. They can get either of the 2 land types as normal fetches do. So you can get those dual lands, you can get those shock lands, you can get the Amonkhet cycle lands. Any land that has the basic land type you can get with these. Mm-hmm. And they come in untapped.
I also want to mention the panoramas. A lot of people actually don't play them, and they're kind of underrated because people just don't think about them because they specifically spell out the word. Like, you can have an Esper Panorama inside of an Izzet deck. Yes, you're only fetching for a island, but even still, you can run it.
That's true. Going back to the slow fetches, they're kind of like a reverse Terramorphic or Evolving Wilds. Terramorphic and Evolving, they come in untapped, but the thing they bring out comes in tapped and can only get basics. The slow fetches come in tapped, but the thing they bring out comes in untapped, and they can get anything the normal fetches can get. Not everyone can afford the fetch lands, which are only going up in price, and these are definitely a very, very budget-friendly option. Yes, it does have the same pitfalls as tap lands do, but I think this has more potential value than straight-up tap lands do.
Last segment, or last topic on lands, then I promise we'll go to something else. The most underrated thing, in my opinion, realistically, is people running basic lands. A lot of people, Eric's definitely one of those people that does it, will say run duels, run tri-lands, run things that tap for 2 colors or something like that sense. Realistically, basic lands are probably the best thing for you to be running because you don't have to worry about if it taps for 1 or if it taps for 1. My main thing behind it is because of Blood Moon. And because of Magic's Limit. And I know what you're going to say, that yes, it's a corner case thing, but there are things like there is something like Trailblazer's Boots, which once it's equipped to a creature, that creature can't be blocked if the opponent has a non-basic land. If I'm running all my basics, I can still block him.
Yes, but like I mentioned before, everyone runs Command Tower at the least. You're not telling me you're not playing a deck that is more than 1 color that has Command Tower in it.
Let's take it away from all or nothing. The last time I played with Aaron, I had out Trailblazer's Boots, and he on purpose refused to play a shock land. All of his lands were basics. He had enough of a split to where he could just play his basics and wouldn't need to worry about the 2 colors, and he just played with that just so he could punish me or not get punished for playing that land. Because I think what you need to do is you don't need to just cut out all your multicolors, all your non-basics. You just need to amp up the number of non-basics, or use enough to where you're not only seeing your non-basics. Because your game will get... How many CDH games... Does Blood Moon get played in CDH?
Yeah, I think so, to slow down...
To slow down your opponents. Because I'm thinking, because people...
But no, that would screw you over, too, because your non-basic lands would be mountains. And
True.
basics are hardly never played in CEDH.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I guess that's not the context I'm trying to point out. How many of your decks get completely shut down if you can't use your non-basics?
Yeah. Or it just gives your opponent or even still, let's go back to the Fellow Stone theory of if you're just running basics and they're expecting to have that triple color or something like that, it kind of shuts down the Fellow Stone just a tiny bit more. My thing is, it taps for that color. You don't have to worry about not tapping for that color. If you've got something like...
This is why you run Chromatic Lantern in your dual color decks, Aaron.
Yes.
Because you're so mana screwed by only playing basics and not playing any of the dual lands, you have to rely on Chromatic Lantern. I figured you out.
But upside, I can block Marisi when he plays his bull crap. I'm not affected with Blood Moon when that drops.
You can see what finger I'm holding at Aaron if you think real hard.
Oh... Let's get real. Trailblazer Boots isn't exactly a common thing to see. And I admit Blood Moon might be more common, but my decks generally aren't overly screwed by them.
They're
Maybe
not overly
inconvenient.
screwed, but they're seriously inconvenienced.
Well, that's the thing about Blood Moon. It's inconvenient. I mean, if we're going to go on that argument, you might as well be like, oh, well, I shouldn't play creatures then because they come in tapped when Thalia's out or some other such nonsense. Using Blood Moon as an excuse to only run basics or run more basics than you would normally otherwise, it's poor logic.
There's a lot of stacks cards that focus on I don't know that for sure.
Actually,
there is. Like Back to Basics.
Yeah, Back to Basics.
There's a lot of good cards out there that mess with non-basic lands. So if you have a support of basic lands, that you can prevent that from doing anything to you.
I'm not saying not to run basics, but there are negatives in the case of, not meeting the pips that you need.
So one of the other things that we want to mention are counterspells. There's 2 segments with this. The first one...
Unconventional counterspells. Ones you may not see across the table.
Like that Force of Will?
Unlike unlike the Force of Will.
That one is not seen for a different reason.
Yeah, right.
It's expensive.
One of the counter spells I kind of want to mention, or the type of counter spells, are the ones that make your opponent pay extra. Example being Spell Pierce. Single blue mana for an instant, counter target non-creature spell unless its controller pays 2. So let's say someone overloads a Psych Rift, which happens more often than I want to admit. It's 7 mana. You cast this, it's now countered unless they pay 2 extra mana. So that's basically additional 2, which makes it now a 9 mana spell. 2 extra might not seem like a lot because you're thinking, okay, well, if they've got enough mana to pay for the Psych Rift, then they have the extra mana. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes it's just that I'm going to cast Psych Rift at the end of your turn or something like that in order to make sure that I have the better turn coming up, and I don't calculate out, that 2 extra mana. There is also Mana Leak, which is 1 in a blue for an instant, counter target spell unless its controller pays 3. That just targets anything. Your commander, that's a 4 mana thing, you cast Mana Leak on it, it now costs 3 extra. Unless, if they can pay it, awesome. Then they don't have a follow-up play.
How do you guys feel about this sort of corner case? Turn 2 or 3 or 4, someone goes to play their commander, they tap out because it's turn 2 or 3, and they're trying to get out their commander, and you play this. That's a really good move.
Yeah.
Now they have to wait 1 to 2 turns before they can bring it out again.
And then you mana leak them again because somehow you've cheated and played multiple copies of it.
Or not even, you don't even mana leak them again. So let's take Teysa Karlov. She's a 4 mana, 2 and Orzhov, so white and a black. Turn 4 comes around, you play out your commander, you tap out to play her out. Cool, I'm going to go ahead and pay 2, mana leak her. She costs 3 more, you physically can't pay for it, so she goes back to the command zone, she's countered. She now costs 6 mana. Then turn 6 comes around, or let's say, turn 6 comes around, and then I Spell Rupture it. Spell Rupture is 1 in a blue for an instant, counter target spell unless its controller pays X, where X is the greatest power among creatures you control. Even if you have a Llanowar Elves, they're not paying 1 extra. They've tapped out. They can't. It gets countered again.
There's a similar spell that does that, but it's the CMC of the spell cast
itself. Yeah, so they're doubling it. Or even using Spell Rupture for something like a Cycle Rift. You have, your own commander, which is 3 power or something. Tajik. Yeah, Tajik. You have Tajik or something. He's 3 power. Okay. Countering unless you pay 3 extra. Now you've done countered their Psych Rift unless they pay 3 extra. They've already paid 7 mana into it. Now I've got to pay a grand total of 10 mana. And I know what RJ's thinking, where it's okay, well, I'll just pay the extra, who cares? My point is that you will always, especially when it comes to Magic, you have a play, and then you'll have a follow-up play, typically. You don't count for, if you mostly think, okay, if someone's going to counter this, whatever, it's a 1-for-1 counter, it goes to my graveyard, I don't care. Versus this, I play this, it gets countered, I'll pay the extra 3. Now I don't have the ability to play that Signet or that other thing or that Basalt Monolith or whatever because I had to counter it in order to make sure this fully went through. It's slowly taxing your opponent, and that's the reason why I feel like these should be used more than they currently are, which is basically 0.
Well, the reason they're not played, here I am being the negative Nancy again, is because of the opportunities they have to fail. If someone just has the extra mana lying around, you just wasted a card. But this enables these cards to be used more tactically. So I think these kind of cards are good in really early in the game, or strange enough, really late in the game. Mm-hmm. Which might sound kind of weird because you're saying, wait, Eric, really late in the game? Is that when people have thousands of mana? Yes. But end of the game is usually when people tap out to win.
Yeah. If someone, think about all the X spells. Fireball, Torment of Hellfire, Debt to the Deathless. Exsanguinate. They're usually tapping out because they want to get the biggest effect possible. If you Spell Pierce a Debt to the Deathless when they just tapped out for X equals 20, they're screwed.
They're salty as hell.
Realistically.
Like, they're the Dead Sea if that happens.
The Dead Sea Trolls, as Binding of Isaac players would know it.
We also want to mention, what was the Phyrexian one again?
Mental Misstep.
It is a single blue Phyrexian mana, basically for an instant counter target spell that's converted mana cost 1. Now, a lot of people were saying, what's 1 mana that really needs to be countered? Soul Ring.
Yep.
Period.
Played
Soul
in every deck. Birds of Paradise. Stop the green players from ramping out of control.
Llanowar Elves.
Llanowar Elves.
Oh, here's one that everyone freaking plays. Sentinel's Divining Top. You know what CMC Sentinel's Divining Top is?
1.
Yes, it is. Now, this I'm not recommending running as much as the other ones we mentioned, because this is a very specific, unless you have this to counter that one thing, it does nothing else for your deck, but it is still really good in general, just because you don't technically pay any mana for it.
You can counter my Mass Hysteria.
What does that do? Wait, what?
You can counter my Mass Hysteria.
A Bassaria is one, isn't it? It's a single red.
It's a single red.
You can counter those cantrips I'm abusing in Feather, and I won't get it back.
Oh yeah, how about that? That's a thought.
You had thought.
But yeah, that's just my opinion when it comes to multiple counter spells, just because we don't see them a lot, and people always think, similar to how RJ was, that, oh, I'll just have the mana, I'll just pay for it. But it messes up your plan. And interrupting your opponent and doing anything, even if they do get to resolve their awesome spell, you now force them to pay extra mana for it, which means it slowed down their plan at least a little bit. That's always good. All right, I feel like it's time to jump over to our favorite segment, which is going to be Last Call.
Last call?
You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here.
It actually feels really good to hear you say that again. People have been screwing up every single week. It's fine. Everything is fine. All right, so final thoughts and a question to the people listening is, what are some cards that you play with that some people think you probably shouldn't be playing with? Or cards that people say, oh, you should take it out of your deck. It doesn't do anything. You should upgrade it. Stuff like that. Let us know down in the comment section below. I also want to thank our subscribers, which are following up on screen right now. You guys are completely awesome. I love you guys to death. We love you guys to death. Speaking of thanking people, I want to thank our friends over at TCG Player below that take you to tcgplayer.com. You're going to be buying cards anyway, so I want to help the channel at the same time. I also want to mention the fact that we are also on Spotify as well as iTunes, so you can check us out over there. And if you're on YouTube, make sure you hit the subscribe button and like, comment, share, do all the fun YouTube-y stuff, and hit the bell notification. Thank you guys so much for actually watching and listening. We'll see you guys next time.